Yeah, Janice is over there.
Oh.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get the special meeting on the way. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
It's called to order.
Mayor Parton,
Here.
Vice Mayor Gore, Counselor Joyner,
Here.
Counselor Harris,
Here.
Counselor Denton,
Here.
Counselor Pelham,
Here.
Counselor Holloway. All right, you have a quorum.
All right. At this time, is there a motion to allow Counselor Harris to participate remotely?
So move.
Second. At this time, Counselor Harris, can you state for the record where you're conducting the meeting from and the reason you are asking to participate remotely?
I'm conducting it from home for medical reasons.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Seeing no lights, roll call, please.
Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Counselor Joyner.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. All right, we will go ahead and move on to Dr. Manker for the meeting.
Good afternoon, City
Okay.
Council, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Tonight, we will present to you the taxes, the proposed taxes for council's consideration. Throughout the budget, we did go over this information in the Finance Committee on yesterday, and so it's basically a presentation to council. The goal of tonight is to have a discussion and conversation about which taxes, if any, that council chooses to consider, and then on April the 16th, we will have the tax resolution, voting for the tax resolution to be set, so the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer Department can get those bills out in a timely fashion.
Okay.
So with that said, I will turn it over to Mr. Russ Branson to begin the presentation.
Great, thank you, Dr. Maker. Council, happy to be here before you tonight. We've had lots of meetings the last few weeks talking about revenues and expenses, and we kind of went through where we were with the budget last week. So as we talk about taxes, I'm casting it in the realm of how to balance the budget, right? Because it's not, we don't just increase taxes just to increase taxes, but we increase taxes for a purpose. And so as we go through, when we get to the end of this, we'll revisit this slide in terms of the, as we talked about on Tuesday night, what's really, we have within the base revenue that the base revenue that has been identified for next year, we're able to fund operations. We're not able to fund capital. So when we're talking about taxes, in terms of how we're casting this, how we've cast it so far, we're really talking about capital, right? How do we fund additional capital projects that we need to do to move forward in this coming fiscal year? So I'm going to talk about critical priority projects that we're trying to fund and to move forward there. So that's part of the focus of why we're talking about this. Then we're going to ask you to determine, and that will happen on Tuesday night, which, if any, existing tax rates should be increased. We are also recommending or looking at a cigarette tax, the addition of a cigarette tax to be added to the city's taxes. And if you decide to go that way, we'll give direction to the Commissioner of Revenue and myself and the city attorney to kind of move forward with what do we need to do to make that happen. We're not just talking about taxes tonight. I'm also looking at stormwater fees because that is both something that's been low in terms of what we've been charging, as well as the biggest need for capital in terms of dollar amount is on the road side, and stormwater projects and road projects are very interlaced. So this actually will give us more money for road projects overall. And then we're also, part of what, this is just generic on sewer. We need to get a new sewer rate study. So there's no sewer increases proposed in this budget, but just saying those need to come, and we're going to ask you if we can move forward to do a study. And then, based on what decisions you make on Tuesday, staff will finish the budget and based on those directions. Okay, so that's kind of a broad thing of where we're trying to get to tonight, and I guess to finish up on Tuesday night. So budget needs. So I've just talked about this a little. right? Operations is funded through our forecast revenues. Capital is the big thing that's unfunded. The staff identified as much as 6.9 million that's needed for capital in fiscal year 25. We're going to, again, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Regional water will be funded with rate revenues from industry partners and city sewer revenue. And we're still working on that budget, so that hasn't been set yet, but it will be set. And the capital will also be discussed within that context. So that capital is not a part of the tax discussion. That will all be funded through regional water revenues. And then sewer, again, will be funded with increased sewer rates when we get those, as well as when we find out when all the ACFRs and financials are done, if they have money, they might be able to fund some of their needs from accumulated revenues. But we don't know that yet. Okay, reserves. No additional funding is identified at this point. We have talked about it several times. The need for a reserve study, the need to add reserves. So it's not saying we don't have additional need for it this year. It's just saying we're running tight, and kind of depends on where you go with the tax rates, actually. If there's additional money that you can fund reserves, that would probably where I'd say if you go beyond what's needed for capital, that's where that might want to go. On the regional water, there is a reserve fund requirement that has not been funded, so we'll start working towards funding that this year, again, as we kind of figure out where we are financially with the financial reports being done. We'd want to have that as part of the sewer rate with a rate study, have that as part of that. So that'd be, I think, part of the sewer rates we'd recommend, that they also include something to build towards a reserve. And then we talked to just the need for a comprehensive reserve study, and we will start working on that after budget season. So that's the needs. Again, we're going to focus on capital needs. And with that, let's talk about what the capital needs are. And so here's what I've called priority requests. And so this is what I mean by priority requests. I went to all of the department heads and said, okay, you have your capital projects list. What can you live without, right? So we're trying to fund what we absolutely need. And there's the problem with that, it gets kicked down the road a little, right? So we don't have it this year, but it's something going to show up in the following year if we can't fund it. And so the biggest, again, we talked about the biggest CIP initial funding need is going to be is on public works and the roads. So that list of projects there gets us through all the projects that are funded by, or we need to fund in order to get state and federal funds that have been allocated to the city for these projects. So it's really critical to be able to do that. That's a $4.3 million cost, but we do have $1.6 million in federal aid, $267,000 in VDOT. We'll be using kind of the existing stormwater fees to help fund those. That's $904,000. And so general fund contribution would be 1.5. So when we talk about that 4.3 million in projects, 1.5 million would come out of the general fund. And then you see, so with fire, there's a ladder truck payment. They didn't have much else. They're going to be adding more things. Police, these are this is basically, for the most part, their list. Recreation, this is a subset of their list. And I'll just point out in the community center, HVAC, this allows them to get started for what they need this year. And so actually the 250,000, they could get started with even a little less, but I think that's, it's about a third of what they asked for. And it'll allow the city to operate the pool as needed this coming year. IT, these are their two top projects. And then zoning, they had two projects. This is the one, the other was wayfinding, which it's shown up a number of times. They're saying, okay, we can't afford it this year either for now. So in total, the amount of general fund needed for that, what I call my term, priority list, is $2.4 million, just over $2.4 million we would need and from the capital. And we'll talk about exactly what that means, but I do want to talk also about what's not on the list, right? So we talked about what's on the list, what the additional requests are. I want to highlight Public Works. I did ask Michael Campbell to be here in case there are questions about this, because their projects are both the most dollar-wise and probably in some ways the most important to the community at this time. All of these projects are actually, that are listed here, are needed. It's not that he said, oh yeah, I don't really need to do those. It's Mike, I really need to do those, but I don't have the same kind of funding, outside funding ties to these. And so when we look at a recommended amount, I'm going to recommend taxes and other forms of revenue that will fund about half of these. And then we look throughout the year for the other half of money. And that could come through, we have different savings that come through the year through not spending money, savings with vacancies. This is an assessment year for taxes, so you could see some increase there that might provide money in the later half of the year to try to fund all of these projects. Fire, the fireboat replacement, the generator, that'll probably need to come back the following, next year. That probably, I think we try to find money for the boat as well. And recreation, they just have, they have a lot of different needs, including this is where the Riverwalk shows up. A lot of these things we try to, there'd be some grants. We'll talk a little about options, but these are the other things that were on their list that aren't included here. And IT, Microsoft Office, which is going to come up in some form in the next few years as we need to update our licenses. A managed print solution, and there'll probably be some, my guess is when we really look into it, there'll be some savings with that as well. So that might kind of wash out, right? Here's the cost, but there might be some savings. And then the wayfinding. So just important to say this is the entire list between these two charts of what's been asked for. So when you're deciding what to do tonight or what not to do tonight, it's important to keep these things in mind, because this is basically at this point what we're talking about. Now I want to also talk about CIP funding. This came up in our discussion on Tuesday night. Is that this is not just a one-year thing. These are the CIP funds over the next 5 years. A lot of these costs are for roads, and I from what I know of Michael so far, what he says is he went through these very intentionally to say what was really needed, and I believe that's true, right? So I think that when you look at this, it's like there's real needs coming up for the city. And my guess is the needs are probably greater. I think everybody's kind of holds back a little bit. These are real needs. So when we're talking about funding, maybe raising taxes to increase, to fund some capital, that's going to be an ongoing need for the city. And obviously, when you get out to 29 and a new fire station, if that comes at that time, we're going to have to really be thoughtful ahead of time of how we get there. We talked about. But this is just to say we're not just talking about one. Even though these are one-time projects, there are other projects coming behind. So it's not a one-time need. There's a lot of investment for any city that continually needs to be made. Okay, so funding options. So here's where we start talking about the kinds of things that you have some control over in terms of how do we get more revenue into the into the city's coffers. One is to increase taxes, right? So that's one of the main goals that we're talking about tonight. So what we've looked at, and we'll talk about each of these in turn, is a maximum. These are all maximum increases of real estate tax by 7 cents per $100 in assessed value. Personal property tax by up to 50 cents per $100. Machinery and tools. I knew this is wrong. It's also 50. It's 50 cents. I'm sorry about this. I saw this earlier. Did not correct it. 50 cents, not 5 cents. It's right when we get later in the presentation. Food and beverage is 5% of a bill, so we're getting 0.5% tax. Lodging tax be 1% of room rate, and the institution of a cigarette tax at the max is 40 cents per pack. So we'll talk about each of these. I'm going to give you my thoughts of what we can do this year, which are neither the right things to do or the wrong things to do, but they're thoughts that give you a starting place, maybe a jumping off place for discussion, just in terms of, here's what I think, and I'm sure there'll be lots of variances off of that. So that's on the tax side. We'll talk about each of these. Stormwater fees, we mentioned to increase from $4 to $6 or $8 per parcel per month. That would yield between $450,000 and $900,000 per year. You get additional $63,000, right, of revenue by changing the EDU for non-residential units, say from 2,100 square feet to 1,800 square feet, which means that in commercial units, we take the square footage and we say for every 2,100 square feet, that's equal to one single-family unit. And if we reduce that, and there's no magic number to that, it could get you a little more money as well. That's something we'll especially the stormwater, and I'll talk about this. We're going to come back at the probably beginning of June, because by the end of May, there's a study currently being done through Public Works that addresses the stormwater issue, and so we'll have some real data to talk about in terms of what those needs are and how fees would relate to that.
Mr. Branson, you have
Yes.
a question from Counselor Pelham.
What is EDU again?
Yeah, yes, thank you. It's equivalent dwelling unit. It just means what's equal to one house, right? So if a house is being charged $4, every 2,100 square feet of a commercial parcel would be charged $4. And so if it's a 48 or 4,400 square foot parcel, or I'd say, or let's go 8,400 square foot parcel, they would be charged $16, so equivalent to 4 houses, right? So that's what that is.
Yeah, spell it out first time.
I know,
So-
I know. You've called me on this before, so you're right.
People should know. I should know it, but I just don't. So.
All right, reduced operating expense. Yeah, so the other thing is we can cut our other operating expenses, right? So if you don't want to add taxes, what do we cut, right? I will say it's not that there's probably nothing to cut, but you run a pretty lean operation here in terms, after years of having lean budgets. And so any operations is difficult, not, and that's a different kind of difficult decision to make, but that's an option the council has before it. So I just want to put out, it's not just raising taxes, it's also cutting services, right, is another option that's on the table. And the reality is we just can't, always have everything. So we have to make hard decisions one way or the other. So we're gonna get into the tax discussion a little more. I'm just gonna give you a little more context before we talk about where I think we may need to go. Real estate taxes. So these are 3 charts on real estate, personal property, machinery and tools. Let's start with real estate. What's interesting here is back in 2004, your tax rate was $1.20 per $100 valuation. That went down starting in 2007. My guess is that was during the real estate bubble. And my guess is values were going up. And so you reduce the tax, you reduce the rate to kind of keep taxes balanced. Continue going down in 2009. And now we're in the middle of the Great Recession. And so you're probably losing lots of value and losing revenue. So it then slowly started to come back up to where it was set in 2015 at $1.13 per $100 valuation, and it stayed there. So the blue one is where we are now. So it's been there in 25, that'll be 10 years, right? That rate has been stable. Personal property tax in 2006, it was $305. These are just the latest numbers I have here. It was raised to $350 in 2009 and remains $350 today. So that's been in place for about 16 years. Machinery and tools tax rate, that was in 1995, and I have data back to then, was $303. In 2003, it got increased to $305, and then 2 years ago, in 22, we increased it to $310, and it remains at $310. One thing to note, which is just that, and machinery and tools is less than personal property tax. Machinery and tools can never be above personal property tax, right? So we can't increase it higher. We're not proposing. Well, I guess we're saying the max we could do it now is 3.6, but you'd also have to make sure you increase personal property tax 3.6. If you did that, I don't think that's probably going to be an issue. But this is kind of a really brief overview of the tax rates. Now, tax rates is one part of the equation. The other part is where value's gone, right? What's happened in all that arena. So tax rate isn't the only piece, right, of this, but it's the piece you control, right? How much do we charge in that rate? Okay, so now I want to talk about each of the taxes, and on each of these charts, you're going to get a couple pieces of information. The chart is going to show you the maximum tax we've put out in our advertisement in the orange, and then the blue are your surrounding jurisdictions, both city and county. City to city is the best comparison, but we have been asked to put in counties as well because, you know, people have, if they're looking around, if that's a big deal for them, then they might look around and say, oh, they have a lower tax, you know, I'll go there. Although my experience is people make decisions on other factors before, it's not just tax rates, but it can have an issue. But just to say that if you go up to 120, you're in line with your neighboring cities, and then all the counties are lower, and that's just how they seem to run, much lower than cities. And then I have in this red box for each of these is just to say, look, if you increased, and this is if you did the maximum of 7 cents for $100,000, every $100,000 of assessed value, the tax would go up $70 for the year, right? So I want to give you just some context of, you know, what that means. So if you had a $200,000 property, it'd be 140, 50,000, right, it'd be 35. And then anything lower, if we go lower than this, which you obviously can go, it scales down from that. So it would never be more than this. And if you had $1 million, which is going to be more your commercial pieces of assessed value, that'd be $700 per year increase on $1 million of assessed value. Okay, machinery and tools tax. This is charged to manufacturers. I believe there are 49 plus or minus businesses that get charged the machinery and tools tax. And this is for the stuff that can move, right? It's not the building, it's all the machinery and stuff working inside the building. Currently, again, we charge 3.1. We said if we went up to 3.6, it could generate $100.3 million in revenue. And so for $1 million of AV, and AV is on the machinery, and there's a whole, you know, how they set it, it's this whole other thing. But that would be an addition of $5,000 per year increase. And you can see that this machinery and tool tax is kind of all over, you know, all over the map in terms of you definitely wouldn't be the highest, but there's many that are lower. And this is another one. This has different impacts for the city because you have a lot of industry here that do have a lot of expensive machinery in theirs. And Colonial Heights, I don't think, because I've driven through Colonial Heights, doesn't have the kind of manufacturing you have here. So yes, they have a lower tax. They also have a different economy. So again, these are the things that are difficult to just, you know, to talk about in depth at this kind of meeting. But it's just to, you know, just to say the tax rate isn't crazy, but you have different industries than your neighbors too. So it's hard to compare. So that's machinery and tool tax. Personal property tax, you know, again, primarily it's on personal property. Tangible personal property, primarily for most people, it's the vehicles they own. You got boats and things of that nature as well. Currently, it's at $350 per 100 assessment. We're saying go up to 4. And again, so I've tried to scale this here. If you have a $10,000 vehicle, that would cost you additional $50 per year in personal property tax. And again, with this increase, you're kind of about the same place as everywhere else, right? You're not the highest, you're not the lowest, you're kind of in the middle. So, you know, where you are isn't like extremely low, where you'd be isn't extremely high, but that's, you know, so it just gives a little context on those sides. All right, other taxes. Food and beverage, you're currently at 6. Could go up to 6.5. So for a $10, if you go and, you know, grab a sandwich, maybe, unfortunately now $10 seems low, right? But $10 would cost you an extra 50 cents. Increase in lodging tax from 8 to 9%. If you had a $100 room, night cost, that'd be an extra $1, right? So these are not, you know, they're a smaller increase. What I like about increasing lodging taxes, it's people who are coming in from outside the area to stay here for whatever reasons. They're not taxpayers, but the reality is they use your roads. They sometimes have heart attacks or other issues. They call police, they call the fire department, right? So they take advantage of the services here, and we're not trying to take advantage of them. We're just saying there's a connection between them being here and the services provided. And so the lodging tax is the way you have for generating some revenue to help pay for those services. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little, and I know this is, we'll have time to keep talking about this as we've gone through some of those quickly. Here's where I'm going to start getting into my thoughts on what to do. And this is, this is just my thoughts in terms of sitting with this. Okay, so we've gone through and we have cut out costs from the general fund budget to allow $618,000. We have stormwater fees, which I really think that we should increase because there's a big stormwater cost and need to address that. That's built into what Public Works does. It's a small fee per parcel, but it generates some big benefits for the city in terms of having money to generate that. And now we're coming in taxes. And so I've put this in kind of three categories. One is the priority projects. Again, I'm relating this back to what is our need? And our need this year is capital. So, hey, how do we fund this $2.4 million in priority projects? And so increased taxes of $750,000. And if you look at my tax increases below, which I said in a potential order of how you might do these, $750 would be cigarette tax, lodging tax, food and beverage tax. If you did those three taxes, and we kind of went back and found another $150,000 to cut out of the budget somewhere, we could fund those priority list of projects, right? So that's increased stormwater fees, addition of a tax, increase of two other taxes, fairly low impact overall to city residents and businesses, not no impact, right? There's always impact when you do this, but low impact. That's a way of getting priority projects. We're not planning for extra money to put in reserves here. We're really getting to a point we're just kind of squeaking by, right? In terms of what our base budget needs are and getting those done. An advantage of this, I think, and one way I'm looking at this is it's hard to make some of these decisions when we don't have all the information we need. And I think people are saying that we don't know completely our financial position, right? Because we don't have our financial data done. So we hopefully will have that by around September. The auditors will be done with that. We'll have, just as we get the first one or two done, we'll get a big jump up in terms of knowing our financial position. We also don't have a plan, right? So I talked on Tuesday, developing a five-year forecast, which then help us lay out all the other things, include the capital needs over the next 5 years, other changes of things that are happening. What happens if we continue to give a 2% increase for staff, which is probably going to be below, the cost of living, right? So to look at all those things and then say we also need, a fire station in the future. We also need whatever that is, and start to build a plan that you can institute over about 3 to 5 years, right? Of kind of moving, which could include taxes. We don't have that data now, so maybe we just move forward with what we have. That's kind of that priority funding option, right? We just do as little as we have to do to get the basics done this year, and then we come back and look at that all again next year.
Mr. Brance, we have another question
Yes.
from Councilor Pelham.
Yes. Footnote number 3, amount of operational reductions. Do you have a list somewhere of potential reductions for, just like you did with the tax increases? Do you have that?
I don't.
No.
I mean, partly because we've gone through that so much. I think, this would be taking little bits and pieces from a lot of different places, even the 149,000. When we get to the, if you look over in the full request, that says, hey, you do all the taxes at the maximum rates, plus we take $1 million off, right? That's kind of a little untenable. I don't know where you'd find $1 million. But I think either the 53,000 or 149,000, we could find some little savings here and there. You can kind of,
Right.
take a little bit from a lot of different, but I don't have a list for you tonight.
Okay.
I don't think those would require reductions in service. I think they'd be things where it's like, we don't know, we're going to reduce it now and see if, if you need more, we'll come back at mid-year to address that kind of thing.
Would it be something you can consider the positions that are not filled, whether or not they should be filled? Do you have?
That is an option, yes.
Yeah, do we know what they are? I mean, will
We
get-
do. I don't know right now. I don't
Yeah.
have that list before me, but we do know that. And
Let us know that.
okay. The thing about that, here's the thing I want to say. Once you start doing that, you do lose some built-in buffer. It's nice to have a little buffer in what's going on because things come up that you don't expect. So that's, yeah. I think if it's a little amount, yeah, probably. If it's a big amount, then it's like you start getting more and more on the edge, right, of your of not having enough money sometime. But priority, so that's the priority. The recommended, which means this is where I'm going to go in terms of what I'm saying. Hey, here's a starting place of how you might want to consider this. Again, we have the budget amount, we have increased the stormwater fees, and now increased taxes have gone up 1.5 million. And that primarily, I'll get to this in a minute, but it's primarily in the real estate side. And that provides you about half of the additional projects that are needed for roads. And then I am saying, hey, we're going to get the other half. We're going to continue to look for that through grants and through looking at, again, that's where at mid-year, when you say, hey, we have saved this money from vacancies, we will reprogram it over here, right, for something like that. That's been the city's, that's a common practice, that's been the city's practice, to program kind of after the fact as opposed to before the fact with losses, but that's be one place you could get that. And so it minimizes how much you're having to increase taxes. It doesn't fund everything, but we kind of have a path to probably get the basics funded. And so you might be, so that, maybe that's still not going really far forward, but it's saying, we're trying to do this now. The other thing I want to point out is what's happened the last, definitely this year, I think the last few years, is a lot of your capital has been carried over, right, from year to year without knowing if you had the money to do that. And so this is not a new issue. I just want to say this issue of not having enough money is not new. It's just you haven't been presented with it, right? And so it comes over as a use of surplus after the fact and doesn't come before you for a vote. And so that's one of the things we said here is, no, what do you really need this year? Forget about, and if it's something that was funded in the past, that's fine. Just bring it forward as a current project. And so this discussion is one of, hey, what do you need to do? How can you afford it this year? There's definitely more discussions to have as we go forward with more information and more clarity on your financial condition. So that makes sense. So the recommended, it adds another $700,000 to the taxes, and it adds another $700,000 for investment in the community, specifically for roads. And then the full request, we need the 6.9 million. Well, then you're going up to all the taxes at the highest rate, and then still cutting $1 million. And so I don't think that's where we need to be this year, or can get to this year. But that's the information. You guys will decide what that is, right? I can tell you what I think, but it's you're the ones that get to make the decision. You have the tough job over the next few days. Okay, and so at the bottom of this bottom right-hand corner, here's the preview, is that to get to the extra 700,000, that assumes a 4-cent increase on real estate taxes. So it's not the 7 cents that we could go to, but it's a 4-cent increase, which would probably be for a $100,000 home, which I believe the median value here is right around 100,000, would be about $40 for the year. Okay, so we have a few more slides to go through, and then I'll be happy to answer some questions. I think a question that should come up is, what other options do we have besides taxes, right? One is grants. Now, we've applied for, the Public Works has applied for several grants that could fund some of those projects. So that's one of the things that might happen. Some of those grants could come in, and we don't need taxes. So I'm trying, holding back on covering all those is saying, hey, yeah, let's keep going out and getting those grants, right? So we have we're not trying to fund something that maybe has a different source. Some of the problems with grants right now is some of our grantor agencies said, great, you want to do a grant, please give us your latest financials. And they don't like it when they see it's 2019. So that makes it difficult on the grant side for now. Okay, then unspent funds, we've talked about that a little, and those unspent funds can be a combination of vacancies, which we've talked about. It can be a combination of somebody thought they needed something and maybe they can't do it for whatever reason. So, whatever program or whatever that is. But there are things that we can do. One of the things we're recommending strongly is that you do a mid-year budget process. And what a mid-year process is, it just means around the time you're starting your budget, the first thing you do is saying, where are we and how do we think we're going to end the year? And we do that before we actually start into the 26 budget. And that gives you an opportunity to both recognize if things are going awry, right? We're spending too much or the revenues aren't coming in fast enough or whatever might go wrong. Or, wow, we have more money than we thought we had. How do we reprogram that? And it gives you kind of a pause in the middle of the year to take a lot of the budget adjustments that might happen and do it in a thoughtful way in a broad context, right? That's what a mid-year budget does. And it's a common practice for healthy cities to have a mid-year budget process. So that's the unspent fund side where we would continue looking. And then again, higher than expected revenues. And I think I said last time, one of the things that's going to happen this year is we have another reassessment year coming, right, for January 1 of 2025. And values have continued to go up. And so you might see some increase there that we actually could realize, through in the second half of this year, because the FERC's, the tax payment in June is the first tax payment of the reassessment year, and that would be for this next fiscal year. But we haven't assumed that in the budget, right? We're not assuming we're getting any increase in the assessment. But so if that happens, that would be extra money. And we should know that around our mid-year time as well. So those are things that, what other options? We're pursuing those options. I don't know of many other options that you have. If revenues come in better, that's great. If you don't spend funds, that's money found you can reprogram. And of course, grants are always helpful to do projects in the city. All right, I have 2 more slides. I'm coming back to, right? Remember what the first slide, this is a reprise of that. Is the kind of decisions before you is how much capital do we want to fund this year? What taxes do we need to adjust to make that happen? Or should we add the cigarette tax? Should we increase storm drain? Because you don't have to do any of those things, right? You can say, no, we don't want to do those things. We want to increase these taxes. So, but these are the things we've put before you. We do want to make sure we have enough money for sewer, but we need a rate study there to make sure we're going in the right direction. And I don't think there's necessarily an action for the council on that. But then, really, when you give us the tax rates, you tell us, yes, we'd like to increase storm fees or whatever else that is. We're going to finish the budget based on that direction, and that's what's going to come back to you for approval in May. So, this is the last slide here. I want to be just clear about. I've kind of hinted at all these things, so I'm going to lay out an option for you to consider. And again, my option. There is 12 different ways to go here, and so I'm going to tell you my thinking. You can apply your own thinking. But I have a couple things. These are stormwater fees and all the taxes, the increase increment, right? So we could do $1. I have $1 per parcel per month, right? On the stormwater, cigarette tax is new, lodging and food and beverage goes in kind of percent of sales, right? What's been sold. Then real estate is per penny of 100 value. Personal property tax and machinery and tools are per 10 cents, right? Because they're usually 3.1, 3.5, is what they are now. How much increment, how much revenue do we project we could get based on those incremental percents? And what's the minimum amount? That's to say, hey, these are the 2.4 million priority projects, and where do I think we could be that put the city in a decent place for next year, and kind of poise you to hopefully move forward with a broader plan for how to work into your financial future. And what that adds is, so we're saying, yes, please do stormwater fees. That'd be a doubling of them, but they're $4 a month. They go to $8 a month. So not a huge amount of money for each parcel. Institute a cigarette tax, which is a new tax for the city. There's some work to be done there, but I think it's definitely doable. Increase a lodging tax by 1%, increase food and beverage by 0.5%, giving those monies. And then on the real estate side, increase it by 4 cents to generate approximately $800,000. Now, I'm not recommending, or in this recommendation, it says, leave personal property and machinery and tools as they are. And let me go down to those three at the very bottom. I have kind of some thoughts, right? Just a little bullet thoughts on each of these. Why real estate and why not the other two? The real estate, there's a couple reasons for that. This is a non-assessment year. And so when you increase this increase will be the only increase they have. So you're not going to get a double increase of this rate plus an assessment. So that's reason one. And I'll say the other thing now, this helps us. If your assessments go up a lot, you can reduce this tax back down next year to get the total taxes at a level you want to be. So this doesn't necessarily, we don't know what that assessment's going to be. I've assumed it's not an increase in the budget, but it might be an increase. And if it is, you have a chance next year to kind of adjust that back, right? So this is just helping to kind of keep up with inflation. So that's one reason, right? It's a non-assessment year. We haven't had an increase in that tax rate in the last now almost 10 years. And our costs are going up. Personal property values may come down this year, which I think is going to result in a need to increase next year, right, to reassess that. So I'm saying let's see what happens with values of personal property, and that's probably going to need to be addressed next year, and rather than doing 2 years in a row, and that tends to be a fairly regressive tax because everybody in the city, regardless of how much they make, has a car of some sort and has to pay this tax. And so I have some sensitivities there. And then machinery and tools tax, I think we need to have more engagement with local businesses to assess the impact on the community. And especially with what I'm dealing with mostly with now is industry. And I think as we talk about the wastewater treatment plant and the cost of operating that and the cost of capital, that could be a hit to them this year. And I just want to be I think hey, let's be sensitive to that. I think this is one where, we just need more discussion. I'm not saying we don't do it, but again, this doesn't have an off year, non-off year. But that's a thought that I provided here. You can go any direction you want to go with this. But that recommended, which is double your storm fees, institute a cigarette tax, increase lodging tax to 9%, increase food and beverage to 6.5%, and increase real estate by 4 cents to $1.17 per $100 valuation. Get you, the priority things that are most important. Half of some of the things that Mike would say are still probably most important, but are important. And then we will continue to work throughout the year to get all those things done as we kind of figure out where we have room in the budget as we go forth. And that, I'm happy to answer any questions or give any more insight to that before you go off. And obviously, we're here to answer your questions. These are hard discussions and decisions.
So I thought I saw a light over this way. Neither city manager or Mrs. Joyner? No? Okay. First one I have is Counselor Denton, then followed by Counselor Powell.
Yeah.
Okay, I know when Mr. Campbell addressed City Council, we are already committed on certain projects for the city with the state of Virginia, right?
Yes.
Is that the 2.4
Yeah, that's the
million
2.4, yes.
that he needs to you need the 2.4 million to keep us viable with the state.
1.6. I thought it was 1.6.
So, yes, ma'am, the, pardon me, the 2.4 million should account for all of the projects I referred to as UPC projects, where we have.
What is ECP?
Yes, Unique Project Code.
No,
Acronym.
Exactly.
Mike, talk into that mic a little bit.
Excuse me. So, these are all projects that were already approved by resolution that have contracts with the state, VDOT. There's been money spent in oversight charges. There's been money allocated and programmed by the state. We are supposed to have had money programmed and allocated by the city for these projects. So the minimum amount simply covers the ones that we have contracts for. Now, let me add that the remainder of the projects are still city responsibility projects that absolutely have to be done, but we just don't have a contract with the state already where we could actually lose money. We would actually have to stroke a check to them to reimburse them for expenses incurred to this point.
Okay, so we need that 2.4 because if we don't do this, the state probably won't give us many more projects. Am I,
Well, there's a lot of things that could happen based off of us not following through with our
if
previous
we don't
agreements.
do it?
Yeah, so if we were to back out, once we have a resolution of support and we have a signed agreement with the agencies, and we have an Appendix A, money's been spent, one thing that they require in grant applications, in all grant applications, is a resolution of support. Yeah, I've been before you before to ask for one. Thank you. That resolution of support is a letter of credit. If you don't honor it, they're not going to honor it either. So you jeopardize your ability to do business with the state moving forward. And that would be unfortunate circumstances. That is what actually pays for, I would say at this point, the majority of the work that we get to do on capital projects.
Okay.
okay, don't go anywhere.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Don't go anywhere, I have a question.
Oh,
And, Mr. Branson, the gray area, I'm not gonna let you sit down.
Okay.
That little gray area where you have recommended the
yes.
changes,
Right.
with adding those taxes and going by that, the stormwater
Yep.
fee and all of that,
Yep.
that would give him the 2.4 million that he needs.
Yes, plus about half of the, these projects here that you see on your screen, right, for Hanks Pond, Heretic Avenue, Wagner Road. So, he would have about half of those monies as well with that, with the recommended ones in the gray.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to be sure he,
Put that,
I would just, I'm sorry, I would just like to speak to that with the last slide, Russ. I'm sorry.
yeah, take that back.
Here we go, right here. So just so that you're aware, for example, Hanks Pond and Heretic Avenue Drainage Project. So we don't have a contract with the state. Now, we're pursuing grant monies, and hopefully we'll get them. And if somehow or another the city council comes up with an idea of how to fund all this, and we find the grant money, awesome. You guys can reprogram that money. But we have, by law, a responsibility through DEQ to maintain our MS4 program. And we cannot have illicit discharge. If we're dumping silt into the river, et cetera. So these projects, the Wagner Road Storm Mining Project, the pavement preservation arterials, we have a duty to do them, but that's something that we could hold off for a year, I guess, if we absolutely had to. Courthouse parking lot, self-explanatory. We just deal with it the way it is. Hanks Pond, Heritage Avenue, Wagner Road, Stone Lining Project. These are MS4, and I'm sorry, that is the, just what it's called. State law requirements that we adhere to. Like, so if you violate DEQ standards, if you knowingly do it, in some circumstances, it actually can be considered a misdemeanor. So we may not have a contract for them, but they have to be done. And then the last thing I'd add is that all it takes is one old corrugated metal pipe, pardon me, to fail under a road somewhere, and we have a $500,000 emergency project. And again, that would not be something that would be a choice for anyone. That would be something that, we can't close Oaklawn Boulevard if something like that were to happen. I'm just using that as an example. So these are all just things I wanted to make sure that everybody had in mind when they were looking at these taxes. And I'm sorry,
Total.
Ms. Pelham.
Where's Hanks Pond?
Mr. Mayor, pardon, can you help me out? My brain is,
It's off of Peterson Mill Road. It's where
Thank
your
you.
ward and Mr.
Seven.
Holloway's ward meet up together.
Okay. Oh, I know, okay. How many, the projects you saying that we approved by resolution that has state fundings and a contract, is it 1.6 or is it 2.4? The ones that we have with resolution that we are already committed to pay for.
Yeah,
there you are,
it's-
yes. So,
Well, it's probably, yeah, it's closer to 1.6. In terms of the city's.
the city's share.
Yeah, city share is 1.6. Right.
2.4 is everything.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So it's not 2.4, it's 1.6. Okay, and so with the recommended stormwater fees, cigarette, lodging, and food tax, that would take care that 1.654 of revenues, right?
Yes.
Correct. So all from 1.6 to 2.4, you want that for these other capital projects.
Well, yeah, I'll say actually if we look at this, the 2.4, the 2.4 includes that, so that would be, stormwater, increased taxes to
Right.
for the first three, includes all the projects listed on that first page, okay?
Right.
So that that priority projects are all of these projects, including, across the board.
I'm not talking about all. I'm talking about the ones that we obligated by resolution that
Yes,
we
that's one
promised
point, yeah, that's right, that's 1.5.
that we would match the money for it because
Correct.
we don't want to be charged with a misdemeanor or him to go to jail.
Yeah.
But those are the required ones that we have to spend. So that money seems like it can be taken care of. So the increase in tax, the other stuff is, you got to get the lease on the fire, I'm sure. But everything else can wait, can it?
I think there's
No, that's the 24. You said just
Community center.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the rule.
Okay.
Yeah, we have-
It's just $800,000 left, but out of the 1.6 to 2.4 is $800,000, that's all.
Right,
But it can wait, basically, till we get next year taxes maybe from the real estate.
There's also some air quality issues that you have with like the community center. Remember
Yeah.
when she gave
The
us the report,
chlorine, yes.
where the HVAC system's having a hard time cycling the air, and so you end up having that buildup of chlorine gas.
And
Like-
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Mhm.
the police radio tower site is also very important because they are having trouble communicating when they're throughout the city. It is a 30-year-old tower, so that's why it's there. Now, I have asked police, and they should, with some salary savings this year, attempt to knock these out. And therefore, we can move them away from the capital project list for this upcoming year. But it was requested, so that's why you see it here.
So have they been able to identify some salary savings or any budget
We,
savings?
so April the 30th, when spending stops.
Okay.
That's when we will look at trying to fund some items that showed up on the capital plan,
Okay.
okay?
And the other, I'll just say the other thing that in terms of, depending what we do with taxes and all that, that some of the projects, let's say like West Randolph shared, or that is what it says, anyway, that's a 3-year project. So we have another 1.6 million next year, then 26, and 1.6 million in 27. So some of these projects are multi-year projects, so we'll need this money, right, ongoing for capital. I think I said that earlier, I just want to reinforce that in terms of what we're trying to do. It's mostly this year, but some of this does carry over into next year for monies we're going to need as well.
Okay. Next was Counselor Joyner.
Right. My questions really has to do with my ward, Michael. It has to do with Riverside Avenue where the road is falling in. Could you tell me if that, I didn't see that on any of these lists. Is that kind of,
See, none of mine.
It is in my 5-year CIP, and it's currently funded.
Okay,
We have,
all right.
it's already under a PO.
just making sure? Just
So,
making sure. I don't want those
To
people
get
to
us,
fall in. so.
I think to
To
get
the
us to the geotechnical reports and hopefully the 30%
Okay.
plans,
Okay,
that's a work in progress
terrific.
and should not have any impact on this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Stay up there.
All right.
Mike-
Counselor Pelham.
Can you, also, does that include your 5-year plan for Wall and Pine Avenue? I don't see anything, there were projects that was projected to be done there in Ward 6, and I don't see any street names on there for that.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part of your question? I am hard of
Is
hearing.
Wall Street and Pine Avenue a part of your 5-year plan? Do you know, you don't have it with you, I'm sure. Can you call me tomorrow and we can talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have,
like-
let's see here.
I'll be right back.
So I do not believe that it is, because the only way that it would be to be part of these revenue share projects.
Yeah,
that-
and that's, yeah, when Butler was here, that's what he discussed with me. It was in some type, I learned through the years that that's how you were doing things. Some were revenue sharing, and then it was another what's the other monies you get from the state?
So there's quite a few that I'm utilizing. There's
Yeah.
revenue shares, which typically Hopewell has used with previous city engineers. I've been before you to ask for more money for that, for Petersburg Street and Richmond Street. There's SGR, I have applications in right now that's called State of Good Repair. Those are for what's considered arterials, so hopefully we'll get a section of 36 paved, and we'll get a section of Broadway paved. And then there are other sources. We're in the process we've just gotten pre-apps in, and it'll take another 2 months for the final applications to be done, but we've got $40 million in for Smart Scale,
Yeah,
which is for 36 on Route 10. And so, we're chasing the dollars. But one of the things I want to point out to answer your question is a lot of the things that I'm pursuing or that we're pursuing in Public Works for grants, I'm going after 100% grants. We have that capability because we have some disadvantaged census tracts here in the city. And so even typical federal funding is 80-20, but we can ask for an exemption. So there's a ton of things that we're pursuing that aren't on here, because hopefully the only thing that you'll be providing us is a resolution of support. And we'll front the money, we'll do the project, we'll get reimbursed every time we make a payment, and it'll be a net zero for the city. A huge net gain, right? But net zero out of our general fund.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Denton and then Counselor Holloway.
Just going to ask you quickie, are you still working with the group in Washington, D.C.?
Actually, glad you brought that up. Yes, ma'am. We've got quite a few projects that we're applying for. We have Essentially 3 projects we've turned into 2 that we've submitted for earmarks to both the House and the Senate. And then we have a whole separate set of projects that we're combining that we're doing for an EPA grant. That EPA grant, and again, you all know how this works with the grants. I'm just telling you what we've applied for. Hopefully, you know, they ask for what will you accept. You know, we would come back before you. We don't know what we're going to get. We could get 0, we could get all of it. But between the EPA grants and the, for example, Heritage Avenue, that's an earmark request. Okay, Hill and Wagner. Those are 2 projects you see on your list here, Hill and Wagner. We've combined those into one. That's an earmark request for 100% funding. And then with the EPA grant, the minimum we can ask for is $10 million. We're not done with that yet, so that may be, and that would be 100%. So we're shooting for around $15 million worth of work there for stormwater improvements. And the way that we're structuring our improvements, if you have to replace stormwater infrastructure, typically that means replacing the road, right? So stormwater and road reconstruction, the way we're looking at it is one and the same thing, because the road is stormwater conveyance. Rain hits it, and it has to go somewhere. So we have a lot going on there.
Don't lose them.
I will do my best.
Keep them right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mike.
Counselor Holloway? Oh, you didn't? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you on that, Mr. Campbell, because your predecessor and I had a very much a big disagreement about that. Stormwater and the paving. He did not believe they went hand in hand, and I'm glad that there's someone that actually agrees with me on that one. Let me see here. My question for Dr. Manker and maybe Mr. Branson. So with some of these projects up here that have been shown as, you know, you're breaking it down into, 3-year projects, funding out.
Right.
Have you guys looked at trying to do the same thing with some of these other bigger projects like the community center, HVAC? Maybe span that over 3 years or 2 years. I know that, because I know that one's in the priority,
Right.
but
Well, yeah, her original ask was for 700,000.
Right.
And so we did say, what do you need this year? We're going to break that out over a few years. So that's
Okay.
for the 250, and then you see $460 is the remaining. And these aren't years. This is just total, but that'll likely be broken out over another broken
year.
in 2 as well, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, what about something like the Riverwalk? I mean, breaking that into like 2 years worth of funding.
Yeah, I think that's very possible, right, to do that. And so with all of these, and some of the differences, let's say, is what you have to have, like
Right.
HVAC, versus what it's important for the community, which is completion of the Riverwalk. And so that's definitely, with all of these, we want to make sure we're programming it when we think the money is going to flow out, not when we're just going to, not when we just program it in, but when will it flow out? And if something like a Riverwalk could definitely take 2 years. So you probably would be broken into 2. So
Okay.
we just want to have identify, once you start it, right, you're committed to the finishing as well.
Right. And because the main reason is, I mean, that's the most used park in the entire city, and I think the usage will potentially double if you end up finishing it, because you'll have 2 means of ease and access to it, plus preventing the public safety issue of someone who has a heart attack or an issue all the way at the very end, and you have no way of getting to them except for having to run down 3/4 of a mile and then have to run back 3/4 of a mile. But there was one other question, and I wish I had written it down. With the stormwater fee. So on here, we look the proposal of changing it up to from $4 to $8 a month. Also, reducing the ERU. Do we have numbers on what it would look like if we pulled that stormwater fee out of the data integrators contract and how much that would save? because
Oh, how much more will we generate
Right.
with them?
yeah,
I don't know a number on there. And so what we do, pull it out and put it on the property tax
Correct.
bills, yes. I'm actually a fan of that, for a lot of reasons. But one is that I don't know offhand. And I think, as we all know, the data integrators' data is not, it's not the best. But we can look at that, but it definitely would generate more money because we wouldn't be charging, not phantom parcels, but we're charging people sometimes that don't live there anymore.
right.
But the amount we've been getting in is about that 900,000. So there's some amount, I don't have a sense
Okay.
right now what that would be.
I just think that would be a way to, prevent and mitigate future increases on it, because it'd be just a very quick, administrative, well, I shouldn't say quick administrative change, but it would be an administrative change in the
Right.
collections.
Yeah.
That could end up saving, the city money and, taxpayers. Okay. All right. So, I think we need to get,
Let me just ask
yeah,
you,
go ahead.
just to clarify,
Yeah,
the tax rates that you have recommended, starting with the stormwater fees going
Right.
all the way down. If we just do that,
right.
bare bones, we can meet the 2.4 million,
Yes,
and that would cover our commitments to the public works.
yes. And the 2.4 plus another 700,000 towards the additional 1.5 million of projects, right, on the
Okay.
roadside, yes.
Okay, so we would be okay with that?
Yes, yes, that's very critical that happens regardless,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
I can sleep.
All right, so I'm assuming you probably want us to now go through the requested action, council action on the slide and see where people's ideas or thoughts are.
Because he's
Yes.
not going to be here next week.
I won't be here in
Tuesdays.
person on Tuesday. I will be here virtually on Tuesday.
Just,
Okay.
I just will not, I cannot be in
you're
town.
not going to be here in person.
I won't be in person, but I will be here, not only in heart, but in, in mind, but on Zoom.
Okay. So would you like us to start going through these?
Yeah, I think that, the things were, again, how do you, there's the sewer fee, there's the cigarette tax, there's other the tax rate increases. And yeah, I have a number here, you don't have to go in that number. It does start with taxes, which will probably be the most difficult part of the conversation, but,
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I'm making it simple, Johnny.
I mean, it's a
well, I know, but
It's
I mean, there's just some things on here. I mean, I don't expect us to like actually come to a decision on a tax rate tonight because some of this information is for the first time that we're seeing that aspect.
Of course.
But like I think me personally, I think a cigarette tax is I think that's an easy one.
Yeah. So could we vote on them one by one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait till you see this room filled with all the smokers. I remember that one year.
Hey,
We threatened a cigarette tax, and these walls bulged from the people who smoked that came to this meeting. It was, I've never seen anything like it.
Until they started talking about cutting football in sports, right?
Right. Cut, yeah. Football team.
All right. So what were you saying, Dr. Manker? I'm sorry.
I would suggest and recommend that we, on the last page, page 16, where we start with stormwater fees, cigarette lodging, as we progress, that we have discussion and possibly vote on each one as you go, so we can get a sense of, how to prep for Tuesday's resolution.
Okay. I think the actual existing tax rates, I think that one probably, again, I think because everyone's, getting to see, some of these numbers, it's probably one that, you might want to, just, send out a poll and see what people think. And then, of course, you have it so that way you have an idea as opposed to us, trying to talk about 5 or 6 tax rates tonight. But, I mean, I think like the cigarette tax, I mean, is everyone, in agreement with that one?
Absolutely not. I think
No.
30 cents per pack for a cigarette is extremely high, and I don't think
Okay.
you wanna push doing something that drastic when people can go right across the bridge and then people end up selling less cigarettes here. It's 40 cents per pack when those rates are, and I don't even smoke, but that's ridiculous.
Okay.
Does anyone know
Counselor
what-
Joyner and then Counselor Gore.
I didn't press my.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, I'm sorry. Vice Mayor Gore?
I just want to be clear.
Talking to Mike, please.
Sure. I already made my stance known on how I feel about all these tax requests, so that's why I'm being quiet tonight. I already know how I'm gonna vote, but in regards to the deadline that we need to have to set taxes, isn't that in like 5 days?
Yes.
So unless there's another special meeting that needs to be called, we can't really poll in the email. We need to make a decision tonight, so that way you guys can be compliant with state law, correct?
Yes.
I mean, according to the budget schedule, unless that wasn't taken into consideration, we still got, till April 16th is when it's supposed to actually be done.
That's Tuesday.
That's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Well, so I said you got 5 days, so there'll be
Right.
another special meeting then. If the majority wants to
That's when
do
we
that.
decide on the 16th, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's been advertised, so, I mean, we have a meeting that day to actually vote on it.
The tax
It's a
rate,
public
yeah.
hearing, yes.
What one's that?
Well,
To
I mean,
vote
we
on the
can-
rates.
can
To
it-
actually vote on the rates.
every council can give her
Yeah,
an idea whether or
next
not they would
Tuesday.
agree to. Oh,
Do we have to do it that night?
Yes.
Yeah.
you want to get a feel for
I
how?
would like an actual yes or no, just to keep it clean.
You gotta have a
Okay.
motion.
Know what?
All
A
right.
vote
For what?
for each one.
Okay.
on the
Okay.
record.
So, Counselor Joyner?
Yeah, on the cigarette tax, I mean, 40 cents seems like a lot per pack. I know I think the total revenue, we're talking, potentially $500,000 is what it would generate. Maybe we pull that amount down. I do not have a problem with the cigarette tax, but I think 40 cents a pack is kind of excessive. Maybe
20.
20, maybe 20, maybe even 15 cents, something like that. I know that really cuts down on the number of dollars, but every dollar counts. I don't have a problem with the cigarette tax.
I mean, I'm fine with 20 cents.
Okay.
Does,
So that's 250.
does anyone know what this neighboring,
Right, that's all.
Prince George and Chesterfield and Petersburg charge? What they charge for the cigarette tax? To make it, so I agree, 40 cent, people will go across the bridge and go
Yeah.
wherever to say maybe
Yeah.
40 cent. Unless they're really addicted, I guess.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We got
They travel from the.
Does anyone know?
Ms.
They
Pelham,
come in
Councilor
with
Pelham, I can tell you
40
what the cigarette tax is for the year 2021 in Petersburg. It was 90 cents per pack.
That, now what the tax was 90 cent
Yes, ma'am.
90 cents.
Total.
Per pack,
per pack?
per
Yeah.
pack.
Total.
Yes, ma'am.
Wait a minute.
In Richmond, it was 50 cents per pack. Were you asking about Colonial Heights as well as a
Yeah.
neighbor city? Colonial Heights was 35 cents per pack. And then, see if I can find Prince George. I don't have it for Prince George, but I will tell you, I kind of anticipated this question. So the range in FY 2021 was from 4.5 cents per pack to $1.26 per pack. Claremont, Virginia, I'm not sure what that is, was 4.5 cents per pack, and Alexandria had the highest at $1.26 per pack. Just to give you all a range.
So people still buying cigarettes in Petersburg, right?
Yeah,
That's
90 cents.
90 cents,
At
so
90
40
cents.
cent ain't nothing.
At night, yeah,
Is that
that's about
total?
almost $700,000.
No, that's just the tax.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that's the total
Petersburg
tax.
generated was a
Do
lot.
we have a
How
tax
much
at
was
all?
their tax revenue?
Yeah.
What's our current tax?
Their budget
No, we don't have
We
the
don't.
tax.
Yeah, you don't have a
Oh,
tax.
okay.
There's no tax here.
It's like 67 million.
What were you saying, Dr. Manker?
I'm sorry, I was just responding to her.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a tax on it.
All right, so do we have a motion for, the cigarette tax?
So are we skipping the stormwater one?
No, that's the next one.
Okay.
We can't vote tonight.
It's a work
We
session.
can't.
Work session.
It's a special meeting.
It's a special meeting.
A special meeting, you can vote.
I move that we implement a, tax, cigarette tax.
As a work session, not a special meeting. It's
Work sessions
in our
are
paper.
special meetings, right?
Work sessions are informal parts of the meeting. You can't ask for action during a work session.
What does the agenda say?
So let's look at the agenda.
I guess it's work session then.
Agenda says special meeting.
But the meeting announcement, how was that
Well,
advertised?
it depends on what you advertise, what you advertise.
Yeah, look at the meeting notice.
I mean, any meeting that's not a regular meeting is considered a special meeting.
Yes, right.
But on the agenda itself.
All right, that's fine. I mean, if we've got questions on it, we'll just err on the side of caution.
Yeah,
We can do consensus.
correct.
Okay.
Is there a consensus to see a cigarette tax?
Yes.
Yes.
15 cents.
All right,
Maybe
so
a
I
show of
see
hands.
one head
Show of
not, yeah,
hands.
show of hands.
Sure.
Yes. We
Okay.
can't be voting.
Great.
We're not voting.
This is
I mean,
not
We
proper.
just
Can't vote during a work session.
All right.
It's an informal part of the meeting.
We're
Yeah.
just trying to get an idea.
Yeah.
You just
So it is-
just
It's
consensus.
consensus.
Is,
Yeah.
is getting consensus appropriate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Harris, are you okay with, implementing a cigarette tax?
I am okay with implementing a cigarette tax.
Okay, all right, so we have, move forward. All right, direction on the stormwater fee increase. Is every,
Can we talk about the
Yeah.
amount? Can we
I'm
talk
sorry?
about the amount? Or
Yeah.
Do we want to deal with the amount on the cigarette tax?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
How many people
We can't, cause then that'll
are
be a vote.
compromised
Okay.
with
Alright.
30 cents? And we don't have no tax,
All right.
and they charging 90.
all right, so is there a consensus to go with the recommendation from Mr. Branson to go to an $8 a month stormwater fee?
I like that.
Yes.
Is that,
Yeah.
all right, say 1, 2, 3,
You said to, what's the question?
the stormwater fee, to take it from the current $4 to the $8.
4 to 8.
Yeah, it's to fund the, pretty much the bare minimum of what we need.
It's crazy that we are increasing taxes and everything all at one time. It just, I think there's no consideration for a low-income household at all. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. You're talking about, not only are we going to increase taxes, we already get taxes taken out of a check for one. We go to the store and pay taxes on everything all the time. And then we increasing, these things might be small to anybody up here that's got money, you know, like that to throw around. But those are big numbers when you come and talking about somebody like me with a family of 7 children. That's just, I think it's just completely inconsiderate of the citizens. If we waited last minute to discuss this, but we talked about last year doing some type of poll and getting opinions, and I understand that we have to meet budgets and everything, but I think there's just other ways we should do it. Taking up double the price, I think it's just absurd. Those little things look like it's small, saying $4 increase here, but you $4 here, you're increasing this over there, and after a while that stuff adds up. And I think it just, I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay,
Council Holloway, you speaking to that?
Yes, ma'am, I apologize.
so, all right. Counselor Harris, are you okay? With the stormwater fee?
Raising it. However, I was, I'm sort of like in the same vein that Councilor Holloway is in regards to, how considerate are we of the constituents, our constituents in the city about this. So, yes, I'm in favor of raising it, but I don't, right now, my question is to what it is that I would be determined how much we should raise it.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a fair question. Okay. Vice Mayor Gore?
I just want to have clarification for the cigarette tax. I know you're polling. There was 4 people that said yes or 5?
There was 5.
Okay. And so
For how
now
much?
Huh?
You saying for the amount I never
say
seen
to
that.
do
one.
it.
Yeah, just to do it.
Yes, just to do it, but
Just to do it.
Yeah, we can
And
come,
then for the stormwater, you're still polling.
correct.
Okay.
All right, so I have, what, 1, 2, 3,
That was 4 out
for
of 7.
stormwater. Yeah, and then Mr. Harris, and then Ms. Pelham, I didn't.
yeah, I mean, it maybe raise it somewhat, but not double it.
Okay,
I don't agree with doubling it at all.
okay,
So I know every time we don't do something, we gotta find money somewhere else, but that's what we gotta do.
okay.
$4 to take
So we can go,
$6.
so we can look at options for
Yeah.
stormwater.
So that 4 to 7.
Next one is to, direct the sewer,
No lodging
The
tax.
lodging.
The
so you're going
lodging.
off this one, okay. I'm sorry, I'm going off the other sheet. Lodging, yeah, I mean,
I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Lodging and.
is there a,
I'm okay with that,
is there a consensus with moving that up 1%?
yes.
What's the
Okay.
total
Yes.
amount? What's the total amount?
Now it goes from 8 to 9, it's currently 8.
Alright,
And
cause I know when we go to hotels, it's like 13% total on taxes.
when you point out,
taxes
we paid a
involved.
lot more than 9.
This is just low.
Right, so what would that end up being?
It is,
So,
Be-
for example, you got a $100 room, instead of $8, you pay $9 in tax per $100 of your room rate.
I feel more comfortable with that. I
Yeah.
mean, because it's travel, people prepare for vacations and usually on the job and come home.
In the surrounding areas, do they charge more? Chesterfield charge $10 or?
They up there.
Yeah, let's see, I think oops, let's see where that was.
I don't remember seeing that. Sure.
Yeah, so it's, Petersburg is at 10, Colonial Heights is at currently 8, most others are at 8, so you'd be like a little higher than them, but they may be also looking at increases as well, I don't know where they are, but 8 to 10 is the range right now.
So the majority is 8. But then
Well, we
there's-
can go
Majority
up-
is, Petersburg is at 10.
Well, we can consider doing 10.
if it's Pittsburgh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what'd you say,
We can
Councilman
consider doing 10.
Collins? You're saying raising it 2%, is that right?
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Counselor Joyner, is that
I'm
it?
fine with that.
Okay. Counselor Denton?
I go by,
This?
I'm going by this. They're the experts.
Mhm.
I'm going by that.
I have no problem
Okay.
I have no problem with 10.
What do you say?
So we can go 10%. Let's do 10.
Is your citizens agree? Yeah, theirs are too. Yeah.
Consensus.
Work for themselves.
That's 7.
Hold them
7
right
out of
in
7.
So, all right, so I think that was a majority.
Yeah.
All right, food and beverage tax.
It's a
Yeah.
half
Yeah, is
percent.
everyone okay with the 0.5% as recommended?
Yep,
Yeah.
One, isn't it?
0.5%.
A half percent.
Absolutely not. That's the last thing y'all want to be
Increase,
an increase. You know how
increment,
much?
1%.
Dominic, please wait until you're called on.
My God.
This is, eat
Mr.
out
Branson,
service.
on your PowerPoint, you show a 0.5% increase, but on the table, you're showing a 1% increase for the food and beverage tax.
Oh, no, it just looks like it's in the between 6 and 7. You're on the chart?
You know, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah,
page
so
16.
on the
Recommended
recommended on the
tax
last
act.
slide.
The last, yeah, the
Oh,
last.
okay, that was my error then. It's just 6.5%, and that's the amount.
Okay, so
That's
the
shown.
only 0.5%.
Oh, no, I say that's the increase per increment. Then on the rate, 6.5% of taxable food is a recommendation. Yeah, that's the confusing. It was just saying how much per 1%, and we're recommending 0.5%. So per 1% be 150, but we're assuming 75,000
Okay,
revenue. Yeah, for half cent.
But it's just a half percent increase.
okay.
As for eat
I
out
did have
food,
one.
I'm sorry.
I did have one, I had a call today from a restaurateur who was concerned about the, a huge increase in that, because they said in Chesterfield County, they don't have a, food and beverage tax.
Right.
And so, but 0.5%, I think, it's not.
Okay,
And that's added to the state tax,
right.
So it's gonna go up to be about 11.
All right, Counselor Holloway?
Again, I say the same thing. I think that's the last thing you ought to add taxes to. If we recommended 9% on that room rate, and that's gonna bring us 175,000 by increasing it, 1%? If we increasing it 2%, that's gonna jump it up to twice that amount already. So we wouldn't even need to do the food and
That
beverage.
is true.
You already increasing it more. You adding a whole nother 175,000 by increasing the room rate tax. And
Yeah, but we're not gonna do 40 cents on cigarettes, so you gotta make up that 20% that he's recommending from somewhere else.
Well, we
We never said a,
We never said
said
what
an amount.
percentage.
Other,
other-
Okay,
other-
okay, so is that, if you reduce the cigarette tax, you,
It needs to stay at 40.
Needs to stay at 40.
But
how many people,
All right,
how,
Vice Mayor Gore?
I agree with Councilor Holloway. Inflation already is a lot for food. And for households that don't get social assistance and they're paying for these things, it is a hard struggle to get meals. So I definitely, I'm fine with any of these. I'm fine with the lodging tax because that's for outsiders coming into the city. If it is increased to 10, I do think it eats up that 75,000 to the point that Councilor Holly was making, and there wouldn't be a need to increase food and beverage. I'm thinking about this also for Ward 4. It's all residential, so definitely I'm not supporting any other tax increase because they already bear the brunt of having to make up the most of the city's revenue for taxes, anyways. So I'm thinking about those households. I definitely don't support doing anything with food and beverage. If you can make it up with the lodging tax, then it makes the most
I'm okay with
sense.
I'm okay with that.
that's good. That's good.
That's fine, we just always gotta remember, we've got, that's assuming we are also going off, the, max recommendation on the stormwater fee to make sure that we meet our obligations with VDOT. And, because, I don't think anyone's gonna have an appetite really for real estate, especially after we had a big assessment increase last year with another assessment increase coming next year. I don't see anyone having much of an appetite on that one, nor with personal property.
Which one are you saying no? Don't
Let's
do?
finish food
Yeah.
and beverage.
The real
So
estate tax?
food and beverage on that one, is there a majority or is there a consensus to go with the 0.5% as recommended?
it's not a consensus. Can you ask Council Harris? I don't,
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, I'm
Okay.
asking. So, Counselor Joyner?
Well, let's leave that alone. It just a
Okay.
0.5%. You're talking a lot of dollars there, so that's easy to make up with
Okay.
the other
which one we
changes.
just talking
I
about?
don't know. What's
The
going
food and beverage one.
It need to be 0.
to keep it at 0.5%.
No, he's,
No,
no,
just
No,
eliminate it.
no, just to,
don't do it at
just
all.
don't do it at all.
No change.
No change.
Don't do it at all?
Yeah,
It's just
Food and
75,000.
beverage?
yeah.
Just 75,000.
$75,000 more at the half?
If you're,
Yeah.
if you're upping, if you increase the,
Lodging.
Tax rate.
lodging tax,
You'll get it.
2%, you're making up for that. So you're doubling that 175, so you're making up
That's
for
what you
that.
said.
2 and 1.
that's what you said.
Yeah,
Part, yeah, yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right, so then real estate, is there anything that wants to do with that?
I think we need to,
Well,
I
I
think we
was
need to
thinking
adjust
we'd
it.
have to go to $1.20, so if we can do it
I think
at
we need to,
$1.17, I think that's,
I think it's a reasonable.
that's reasonable.
adjustment. For 10 years, we have not
I mean,
adjusted the rate.
The
It
city
costs-
knows that we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We've certainly advertised and they know we're having a problem balancing this budget. So
Budget
I think we're all in this together. So we all pay together.
I think that,
Well,
No.
balanced in the sense that, you're funding the bare minimum in capital, but you're not meeting the capital requirements that we need to stay in good graces with VDOT.
that's right. And I think one of the things that has been a problem is I think citizens have not seen, I mean, they say, where do our tax dollars go? They haven't seen any changes. They can't see, well, where are the road improvements, where are anything? And I think that if this is presented correctly, you're not talking a lot of dollars. And I realize that, yes, every dollar is precious, but when you do $70 on a $100,000 home, that's the difference in the taxes.
Over the year,
Over the year, $70 would be the difference.
a little over $5 a
Right.
month.
And so I don't think that that's, I don't think that's too big a stress on most households.
All right, Counselor Holloway and then Vice Mayor Gore.
I would really like to see, if possible, just like this lodging tax, if there's any other possible way that we can move that. Whether or not you just, I respect the statement to say that citizens can see where this money's going, but I also know the complications, how upset probably 80% of our city was when those assessments came out. And even though we did not do tax increases, the assessments on property was huge for a lot of people. And I guarantee you, if I surveyed the room right now to ask any citizen in here, they would speak to that. I think we should find some other way. $70 again, these little things add up. I mean, they add up. And I think if we can, even if you say, for instance, taking it to something where somebody's spending money outside of the house, they can budget for that more easily because I can choose whether or not I go out to eat versus taxes on the house. You ain't got no choice. That's something you have to. So they can re-budget anything outside the house, but you can't it's difficult when you start adding these little fees to things that you got to take care of inside the house. So I'd like to see just some more consideration of it. I would honestly, I would rather say let's go all the way with the 40 cents on the cigarette tax than to mandate an increase in the area of, heck, I would rather see 50 cents on the cigarette tax than to mandate property tax going up. Just my opinion. Because people can choose to budget in those areas versus something like property tax. It's just different. And again, all of us want to be financially well. I make a pretty decent amount of money, but again, I got a big household. And everybody, wants to get to the place where they're able to afford those things, but I would like to not see that on our citizens. I'd rather, if there's tourists coming in, people coming in to visit the boathouse or the Beacon Theater or whatever, those people are bearing those expenses rather than putting them on our citizen after they just suffered an increase in assessment value that caused them to make a higher payment towards their taxes. I yield.
Okay, Vice Mayor Gore.
I thought about what I was gonna say. Change some of my comments. We are all in here with this right now, but we are not all of why we are here. And so because of that, I'm definitely not voting for an increase. I do agree people should see where their money is going, but that's been the ask for years to determine where that is and to communicate that with the public. So, my position still remains the same as I have been saying for the last few years. hopefully I'll get some support with this council. What'd you say? What'd you say?
Nothing.
To look at delinquent payments, to figure out what that gap is. I've been asking for that information. Prior administrations still have not gotten 4 council members to help push this effort with me in terms of where delinquent payments are, helping the treasurer's office get the tools and resources to go over that. If citizens are paying their fair share, it's not fair for them to have to come out of pocket more when we know that others are not. Especially when we know we have businesses in this city who make up a large chunk of that tax dollars that's missing that are still in operation. I don't understand how that's allowed to happen. And we know that it's happening, but nothing's been done to shut them down or have them be held accountable for not paying their fair share. The other part is, I brought up at the last meeting, contracts. It's still, there's a lot of wheeling and dealing when it comes to money in this city, and who is being paid vendor-wise, which is why I asked for a special meeting to dive into the top vendors that the city has paid by department, and to figure out if there's contracts, gentlemen agreements, or just because that's how we always do and it's who we use. Because I can name a few off the top of my head right now. That is money that we have thrown out the window. And then also, just in general, the lack of management and oversight of admin these past few years. And I know I can sit here and say full, straight face, have documents to prove I've not been one of those people. That has led us to be in this position where we have contracts that we have committed ourselves to. We don't have funding. It should never been approved. It should never been brought to us without having all that stuff sorted out. But when you ask questions, you try to have accountability, it becomes a political mess, and here we are. So I'm going to keep my comments to this unless I have to come out of the box and add more. My point is, I will not commit to anything regarding taxes minus the lodging, potentially cigarette tax, because I have done my part in my due diligence over the years to try to prevent us from coming where we are now. And 2 years ago, I pleaded with council to really sit back with the administration to figure out what was going on with our dollars because we knew this day was coming. This is not something new to Dr. Manker. This is something we knew 2 years ago when we talked about the assessments and bringing that contract group. So as far as I'm concerned, those who have been here should take accountability and be the ones to vote first raising taxes, but I will not do so.
Okay. So we're going on to personal property.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. What was the outcome?
I think it's probably just more discussion.
Well, did you poll everybody? Because I didn't hear everybody say something.
Yeah, I look down this way.
Is anyone in favor of
Got
real
a
estate
line.
tax? Is that the question?
I think we
No.
need some discussion. I mean, I think
But
we
we
need
can
some.
give, we can give
discussion
her
is who's
Sure.
in favor.
Sure. I mean,
Right.
I want to keep all options open.
Well,
I mean,
who's in favor like you did the other poll?
yeah.
What about rate, what about changing we're going to, increasing, maybe you've reduced that dollar increase, so that it's a smaller, it's not a lot, but maybe you just adjust that number. Clearly, you can look here at the minimum, doesn't include that. The minimum does not include the real estate tax increase. But when you look at it, this particular recommendation is $800,000, so that's a lot of the total that's there. So maybe maybe it's up for discussion to pull it down. Some people may be, adamantly opposed to any kind of an increase there. The one thing that I point to is the fact that we have not had a rate change in over 10 years. And that to me is a concern and one reason why we're probably in the situation they're in. The other thing that I think that Mr. Branson pointed to was the fact that if in fact the assessments go up, then we can pull this rate down. That is something that we just didn't have the option to do last year when those assessments were up. We didn't know where we were.
We knew.
We just didn't know where we were, so we were, had no tools at our disposal to do anything. Chesterfield County was able to pull their rate down when those assessments went up. We just didn't know, so we couldn't do anything. I don't know, I just think that a lot of these things, well, just for instance, the cigarette tax, everybody around us has had a cigarette tax, and we didn't have one. So we've been walking away for years from revenues. And you know, initially I said, oh, maybe 20 cents instead of 40 cents, but when you look at what is out there, 40 cents seems pretty reasonable. I mean, you could even increase it somewhat to, you know, to what the competition is and maybe pick up some of those dollars. But I do think there needs to be a little more discussion, maybe play with some numbers and see where we come out with. I mean, you know, I hear what people are saying, that, you know, nobody wants to hear that, you know, the tax rate is increasing, but it's not a large increase, it's just a few cents, and, you know, so I guess I'm saying nothing, because I just feel like we need to look at the numbers. We need to play with the numbers and see where they come out.
The polling part.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I'm fine with looking at, you know, what an increase is going to look
Would
like.
we're at 113 now, and how about we break it up to, because this is up to 117.
Yeah.
And so
So-
we give you,
Yeah.
you know, what
Let's take
113
it 2
was.
cents. Let's look at what 2 cents does.
115.
So let's
Yeah.
just finish the poll to see who
Yeah.
wants
Yeah.
you to give us options.
Okay.
All right, so I'm fine with looking at options. I
I'm
know
okay.
Council Joyner
Options
did.
on what?
Real estate and
For real estate.
options.
I'm
Yeah.
not on the option.
Well, why can't
Can
we,
poll the evidence?
Hold on one sec. We're going right down the row here. Councilor Denton.
Okay. I'm okay with the real estate tax going up to 117. I don't like it, but the cost of doing business has gone up, and we have stayed pretty neutral. So there comes a time, and that is our base of revenue for the city, our taxes. So, no, I don't want my taxes to go up no more than anybody else. But I don't want my groceries to go up, but they're going up. They don't care that I spend $100 every time I go in there. This is the price we pay for doing business. So I feel like we as a city have to do the same thing. Things are going up. We can't, I'd love to keep things neutral, but we can't. Not and operate a city. There are needs that we need to do to provide the citizens. Yes, they're gonna pay a little more, but we will be able to provide them a little bit more. We don't pay, we can't provide. So it's a two-way street. It's gotta be, the city can't do everything and not raise these taxes. I'm sorry, we can't. So I think what we have here is reasonable for the cost of living. I don't like it, and I'm sure there are people in my ward that don't want to see their taxes go up.
no, they do.
But a lot of things we don't want to see, but we have to do it. We have to bite the bullet and get it done.
Okay. Councilor Pelham.
Yeah, and I agree with Counselor Gore in the sense that, you know, we as councils allow management to mismanage, and that's what I think the citizens get upset about. And then we'll sit here and talk about increasing the taxes. So I definitely don't agree with the real estate tax of any type right now. So if we can get with our new real estate assessor, ask her what the trends are for next year and how much it's going up. Because if we just cover the 1.6 million for the projects that we've already made resolutions for, that's what I'm comfortable with. We can't do anything else. We've taken care of the employees at 2.5% raise. The police have definitely always taken care of. We don't even know what the school, what they really want and what they're gonna get. So if she can tell us that there's a trend where the assessments will go up next year, then those additional projects that's on that list, at that point, whoever's here can vote it in or vote it out. So you get with the real estate assessor and find out what the trend is for next year. I'm sure she has some idea. And just wait till next year to do it. But I agree, we probably should have raised the real estate tax in increments years ago. That's what I was willing to do then, but now, no. And, cigarette tax, I don't have a problem with it being 40 cents, because that's just a luxury, that you do. And personal property, no, as well. Machinery and tools, yes. So, and then compromise with the stormwater piece. So.
Okay. And Dominic, I think you're a no to it, right?
I want discussion and counsel it respectfully. Ditto a lot of what they had said. It's an absolute no for me. It is correct to the fact, Councilor Denton said, there's more money needed, but that was explained by Vice Mayor and Councilor Pelham by mismanagement of funds overall over the years, but now we're putting into place the necessary things to get the city back on track.
Yep.
When we look at departments, we are here, I rush from work at these meetings, and I get here, go home, take care of my family, and then got to rush to get to these meetings, and they took our meals away. And then sometimes we stay in here until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night without food. Just like they take our meals away, we can take department meals away. There's so many other things that we could fix when it comes to departments, whereas in we do not have to put any more taxing on the citizens. Sounds good, but this is not the only way. We can rethink how we do the rest of the budget when it comes to budget requests from the departments, rather than putting an increase on our citizens. I think it is not considerate. I guarantee you, if you reached out to every citizen that you speak with, 90% of them are going to say no. We don't have to do this. I don't want my constituents or anybody in this audience believing that this has to be the way, because it is absolutely not the only way that we can resolve these matters. My grandma always told me, you can't get blood out of turnip. Everything won't be fixed. Even with the best of a budget, everything won't be fixed. There are some projects that still going to have to wait over a period of time. And I just do not think that this is the direction. Aside of, like I said, lodging tax, increasing stormwater a little bit, things of that nature, I think we just need to rethink the department budgets rather than, it's a hard no, and I would pray that the rest of council would consider our bosses, which is the constituents, and not raising that real estate property tax after a hard assessment that they faced last year. So it's a no for me. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Harris?
I had a chance to listen to everybody's input in regards to this situation about taxes. Well, I mean, taxes is something that's been hated by everybody all the time. I mean, in regards to, especially raising tax. And I tend to agree with everybody, right? But I don't agree with everybody because I don't like raising taxes either, okay? In regards to how we do it, right? And how it's put to us, is right now, my concern is how we gonna do it in the interest of our citizens, okay? And our citizens are the ones that's going to be up in arms for whatever raises come in regards to taxes, especially in the areas of real estate and personal property. Now, that is something that we know. So if there is a way other than dealing with it through that, I wish somebody would show it to me, because that's where I would go in regards to another way. Now, in regards to the cigarette taxes, I'm in agreement that we can raise that. We haven't had it. Hey, we need to catch up because we haven't had that. And it's something that we need to deal with. Now, in regards to the mismanagement of what previously was before I was a part of whatever was going that was being managed. You know, I can't speak to that. And if we did do that, I think we need to fix it. So in regards to the raises in taxes, all right, we need to balance this budget in order for us to exist as a city, or we would be in the same situation like the fourth largest city in this country, near Houston, that can't afford to pay their payroll. So I'm just saying, I'm looking for ways that we can comparably raise the taxes that we had to suit our issues in this city. So I'm in favor of doing that. I'm not talking about committing to any particular raise tonight, not myself. And but I am in favor of doing what is needed.
So,
If you
Council,
understand what I'm saying. I don't want to commit to anything in regards to an amount tonight.
so Counselor Harris, I'm taking that as you'd like to see some options.
Certainly would.
Okay. Okay. And now I have Vice Mayor Gore.
So I think that was a majority on the,
Yeah, to look at options.
so there's 4 for that, okay.
The options of,
It was 4 for the
For-
real estate increase.
so, can you get clarity from Councilor Harris, because he was talking about everything all together in taxes. He
I
wants-
just
But he
asked
was
him the
polled,
question, and he said he'd like to see options.
So the only thing I would say is, yeah, that's fine. There's cost to operate a city, but there's also cost for poor governing. And so that's why I said, hey, more power to the people who want to move forward with this, and even more power to those who want to accept ownership and accountability, right? So in regards to that, cigarette tax, I'm fine with. I thought about the health implications where we're ranking. That's good. Lodging, I'm fine with that as well. I'm not fine with anything else. But the other thing I would definitely want to touch back on is, I did just sit here and talk about delinquent payments, contracts, and funds, and asking for a special meeting support. We just learned not too long ago, one contract in particular, I think has over $100,000 in revenue. City only captures 20,000 of that. We know the contract is a bad contract, but there hasn't been an ask to rebid it. That's part of what I'm talking about. We know that there's monies that we're missing and should be capturing, and we haven't taken any action to address it. So before I vote to do anything like that, that's the part of that cleanup that needs to occur. We're sitting here with this fresh information, 2 weeks ago? Still haven't had anything to address it. So again, I'm putting it out on the floor again. I'm going to call a special meeting for delinquent payments, contracts, and to look at some of the lapse in the business licenses for those who have businesses that have been executing without having that. Is there anyone objection to this for repoll? I'm not going to poll tonight, but objections to having the meeting, or who won't attend for that?
No, I don't think you've ever had any objections to doing
No,
this.
I'm saying, does anyone have any objections? I can try to get something on the calendar. So do you want to do it during the budget cycle or after the budget cycle? So I can get some perspective.
I'd probably do it after the budget cycle.
After the budget cycle, okay.
Yeah.
So, because I had just emailed staff today and I told them I was going to try to get a time period for that. So after the budget cycle, anybody else had after the budget cycle?
Whenever you desire,
Well,
I mean,
whatever.
I think it's,
If they can do it before,
if we,
it's fine. If they can't, we just do it after.
if we're talking, if this one instance, you're talking about a difference of $75,000, then maybe we need to have it sooner than later, to understand what the implications are for the current budget cycle. I don't know if that's
I
possible.
mean, idealistically, yeah, but I just don't see that being all pulled together. But I mean,
Well, does anyone else object to trying to see what can be
Yeah.
done in the
Ask the
time
city
frame?
Yeah,
manager,
go for
can't-
it.
Maybe
can't-
we should ask Mr. Branson, he might be involved in that.
No, I just sent the emails. I didn't really
you
talk to him. So if you
Oh,
guys are
okay.
fine with it, I can circle back to Dr.
I
Minker.
can send I'll follow up in an email after I talk to Mr.
Yeah.
Branson about what
Okay,
the timing looks like, because we have several other meetings. We have the 16th, we have a school board meeting on the
30th.
the 30th, and then we have public
Yeah.
hearings coming up. So
That's fine. just, can you circle back to me to make sure you got the ask right, so then you can
Yeah.
give a tentative date to see if it's realistic or not. If it's not, it's fine, we can wait. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave today without there being support to have this conversation regarding these contracts.
Again, I think you've always had the support. I think it just gets
No.
down to the
Well-
former city manager.
I never had the support because the contract's still here. It's like two or three
That's
of
what
them.
I'm saying. I mean, I know that we have said, I mean, we've had consensus, and I know, I
No.
think we've even taken votes
Yeah,
that
but
said,
no.
yes, we want to see this. But
No.
again, it comes back down to the city manager following through with that.
And that's why I said bad governing, because if council you claim has supported that and he hasn't followed through, he was still city manager.
Well, that, and
So
I
that's
mean,
bad governing and
and I
bad
mean, we've got
leadership.
one that's been here now for 2 years.
And
So, I
you
mean,
guys
yeah,
still
that's
haven't
still-
given support for it. I'm just saying.
Sure
I mean,
we have.
no, you have because the contract is still
Any-
here. I'm talking about
anytime
it. I don't
that-
know why you're taking it so personal. I'm just
It's
saying.
because you're
you
making
know,
it sound like nobody doesn't
'cause
support that. Everybody does.
no, because the contract is still here.
Well,
so
then
that's the
again,
fact.
that's a
So-
leadership issue
And I'm
with the
talking right,
administration.
and you and
Mr.
council members.
Mr.
So
Mayor.
that's what I'm saying.
Can I go down the list of
Can I say something too?
what I need to do? Yes, ma'am.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
put some in?
Go ahead,
Is,
Councilman
can you
Powell.
look at also the departments reducing their budgets? See how much money would bring if they reduce their budgets by 10%?
I think that's a tough one.
Yes, ma'am.
We've
done
that before.
I mean,
We've-
everybody get a
we've-
piece of the pie. I
Some of
mean,
it is food,
we saying
some of
taxes,
it's, I mean, just stuff that's.
the fun stuff they
Not a
do.
need.
You can't order a T-shirt for 10 years.
Right. Get rid of t-shirts, get rid of clothes.
I'm just saying,
All right.
what it look like if everybody department head was, department was reduced by
Oh,
10%. How
I
much
wanna
money would
ask-
that yield?
Can we get this, same spreadsheet with like, with different, on page 16, like for instance, the cigarette tax, 40 cent per pack would be $500,000. Can we get like a 60 cent per pack?
Yes, sir.
You know,
That's
that-
what I expect to bring back
Yeah.
Okay.
to you.
Thank
All right,
Yeah.
Counselor Denton, and then Dr. Manker.
Something's not right with my.
She has her
Um,
light.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
I-
light, it's
I'm
lit.
sorry. I did not see it.
Dr. Manker, would you,
It doesn't, it just doesn't work.
she wanted
Yeah.
to talk first,
Who's next? Who's next?
if you want to go.
Oh, did you want?
I just wanted to say that I think that when we look at, once we readjust these numbers and reallocate, it probably is not gonna take any operational adjustments to, I don't think we'll need to look at, reductions across the departments. If we reallocate these things and adjust the cigarette tax and take a look at, the only thing that I see might be an issue is the stormwater fees. But I think a lot of that has to do with the way you're looking at the stormwater fees, the changes in the methodology. And if everybody understands that, I think that might make a difference. But I think we'll get to those numbers. The minimum, obviously, the minimum does not include a real estate tax adjustment. I mean, that was he just recommended that to get to the 2.4 million, but I think, I think.
Can I ask the question just to make sure I'm tracking with what you're
Sure.
saying? The minimum with the 1.6, that's just what he needs. That's not what the other departments need, correct?
Exactly.
And
That's just what he
The minimum
needs, right?
includes his 1.6 and what the other departments need as their
and what the
basic.
other
Yes.
departments.
That's
need.
right.
Yes.
So what is the 2.4?
That's the 2.4.
Okay, that's the 2.
Yeah, that's the
that's the
2.4.
2.4.
That's the 1.6 plus the
Yeah.
other things the
So the
departments say we
1.6
need.
is just what he needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we'll look through, I talked to department head, I think there may be opportunity to reduce even some of that
Yeah.
a little further
Yeah,
than what I
thank you.
have, that they say add some new information. So also look for, are there opportunities to, to save there as well,
Yeah.
right? So we can look at both sides of the ledger.
That HVAC system in the community center is a real, it's kind of a no, it has to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's the one where I think we might be able to do a little less. I put an estimate of 250, I think
Yeah.
that's gonna be less,
Okay,
for at least the first year, right?
Yeah,
We'll still have
yeah.
to deal with it more later.
okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Branson.
you.
Thanks.
Okay. Dr. Manker?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure the directive is to, council is supporting to bring back stormwater fees, cigarette tax, lodging, and options for real estate taxes. Is that
No,
what
who
we're,
wanted that? The majority wanted that? Yeah.
okay?
Just to just to look at
Yeah,
numbers.
just to look
Just
at
to
options.
look at numbers.
Don't forget me.
Yep. Don't worry, we still got 2 more taxes to go. So,
Well, the personal
was
property
just
and
gonna-
no
machinery
change.
too, is,
Well,
they're not recommended.
I know, but we said we were gonna go through both of those. I mean, do we just wanna say no changes to either one of those?
Machine and
That's what I
tutors,
thought we
no.
were doing.
Okay, I mean, that's fine with me. I'm just,
No,
you
I
know,
thought we were
everyone
gonna go
want-
up on machine
Say
and
no
tutors.
changes in what?
for personal property or M&T.
Okay.
M&T should go up
That's fine.
something. It's not been raised in 10 years.
We did that recently.
We did that
No, we did a
We
couple
raised
years
it
ago.
about,
2
I think
years
it was
ago,
About 2
5%.
years ago.
Not
I mean,
according to what he
5
said.
cents.
It was
2 years ago. Oh, okay.
But I mean, I do agree with Mr. Branson on the fact that, you know, we're going to be having much more robust wastewater budgets. So, you know, I do believe industry should be paying their fair share, but I also don't believe in totally
Yeah.
beating over the head.
I don't either.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Mank. You got your marching orders.
I do, thank you.
All right.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like, for 1 year, my last, that we can try to make this as easy as possible, because every time we've had a budget for the last 7 years, we've ended up at each other's throat, because we all have different opinions, and certain things are special to us that's not to somebody else. But we have cut the budget, we have sent back, cut the budget 10%, get everybody to go back and look at their operations. We've gone line by line by line through the entire budget. And I just feel like that this year, we have a group here. They are professionals. I don't believe there's anybody here, and I know there's some that don't like to hear me speak, but you got to do it whether you like it or not. I'm sorry. We've got professionals here this year to help us with this budget. They are smarter, no more, than we do. Johnny's the only one I know, Mayor Pardon is the only one I know that has a degree in economics. The rest of us, not so much. So I would like us to show the confidence that we have in the Robert Bob Group. And let's listen to them. They're going to guide us. They're impartial. They don't know our pros and cons. They're being very professional and impartial. Let them guide us through this.
That's what they do.
They know the needs of our city. They know what we've got to accomplish. Let them do it. And not all of this back and forth. I'm sorry. I'd like to see them, I'd like to take their lead. And I just ask council to think about it. Don't go back in the past. What's happened years before, 8 years before, it's over.
Oh, Lord.
Grandstanding started.
I just saw all the lights just pop up.
Do what?
I just saw all the lights pop up.
Cause I can't let you. That ain't gonna be the last
grandstand
time tonight.
ours.
Yeah, that
But
won't be.
I don't want to go back over past
Okay,
history.
that's all right. But it won't be.
What's done is done. Today is April the 11th, my husband's birthday.
Oh, Lord.
And we need to move forward, not backward. That's all I ask.
Would you like to call for a motion to adjourn?
No, you see
No.
our lights on here.
Yeah,
Come on. No.
So there's a motion on the floor to adjourn.
I
No.
did, I made it.
Yeah.
Objection.
All right,
You didn't hear me?
so it doesn't have to second, but we do gotta do a roll call.
Objection.
Yeah,
Roll call, please. Yes.
Vice Mayor Gore? Nope. Counselor Denton?
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Pelham?
No.
Counselor Holloway?
No.
Counselor Joyner?
Yes.
Counselor Harris?
Counselor Harris?
Some is blinking.
You on mute, Counselor Harris.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna take a pot shot at
It was
how this went.
Pelham, me, then Holloway.
Okay, Pelham,
Oh.
Gore, then Holloway.
Well, basically, whenever, I've said this before, when you hire a contractor, I respect highly the Bob Group and all the other commitments that we have with contractors. They do just what she said. They come here to give us guidance. They don't know our citizens. They don't know our city. They're introduced to it through numbers, but not people. And so when you have to look in your constituent's face, you have to also consider the fact that they have a household, and that if you're looking at a 7% real estate tax for their homes, you have to have some empathy and knowing the situations. So yes, I appreciate all the recommendations that Mr. Branson gives us, and I think he understands that position that he's in. And if all that was, let's humble y'all get along 7 years ago, maybe we wouldn't be here today. But when you're not in the majority for a long time and people, do what they want to do, it didn't serve the city at the best interest. And so now we have to live through it. This is the best budget that I've ever gone through in 20 years, Mr. Bob. I appreciate the input. It was worth the dollars that we asked for many years ago if we had started. So I consider constituents, and that's my top priority when we do the budget, and we have to consider their needs and what they can. You can project what they can afford and not afford, but I think we've done what he's presented is a great job. Again, it's a big recommendation, and he's given us the great guidance to go by to come up with some viable solutions. So I thank you for that.
Okay, Vice Mayor Gore?
Yeah, I'll echo what Councilor Palm said. The other thing I also think is obviously Mr. Branson, but then also the manager for how she's changed the budget process and included staff early on, had them do strategic plans, et cetera, and let them present their budgets, and was very transparent about what the needs are. Part of where we are right now is because a few months ago, we had to literally play catch up, buy a whole fleet of police cars, buy a whole fleet of uniforms, pay for communication systems, get public works out of DQ violations, all these things that were never brought to council for us to address. And there were huge financial implications that ate up our whole ARPA dollars, our CARES Act money, to the point where we really couldn't invest in the community or use those monies as they were intended to be for the citizens due to COVID. And so that is why we're here. And again, it goes back to a lack of governing. And so I understand that, we got trust staff, that's cool, but trusting staff is what got us here. And then when we sit here and try to verbalize our questions, ask, have accountability, have transparency, it's always made to be a negative when it's to someone else's personal agenda. Then it becomes a bad thing. We should ask you questions. That's our job, literally, by law. That's why we're here. And so if you don't do your job, again, you fell back to being in the same situation. It's going to be a cycle. That's why we're here again. So I just want to make sure that we're not, grandstanding or painting a picture for citizens, especially online, who are watching, that those of us who are doing our jobs and paying attention to what is happening is doing anything other than what we're supposed to be here to do. And unfortunately, part of the issues with the community and people having misinformation and spreading false information and rumors is because of comments like that. I can imagine, remember last few years, we're not letting the city manager do his job. We're not letting the finance director do his work. We're holding up the city, we're making the city look bad, but we try to get stuff out to the public in terms of what the numbers were looking like. And the fact that we couldn't get financial information. We couldn't get a budget that was balanced. It was, you're making Hopewell look bad. But now it's, oh, well, that's the past, let's just get along. No. No. And so that's why I'm standing firm on what I feel in regards to this. And that's why I'm really making a point that there's contracts that need to be addressed because, again, that was always brushed under the rug. And so, again, kudos to you guys for the hard work that you're doing. Thank you for allowing us to do our work. But if we're going to have a positive budget cycle experience, dog whistles and shade like that does need to be had. To speak to the issue, I said why I didn't want to vote, and that was it. And that's all we need to do and move on. So we can do that, and we can adjourn our meetings, and all will be well. We stay here extra 10 minutes for nothing. So you guys have a great night. Shout out to Dr. Manker for doing a great job, and everybody drive safely. Motion to adjourn.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Holloway, I take it back. I take it back. I forgot Holloway.
Oh, I was
I
about to
forgot
say.
Holloway. I take it back.
Now, hold on.
Counselor Holloway.
Respectfully, and all due respect again to the Robert Bob Group and Mr. Branson, I think that you all have done an incredible job. You're doing an incredible job. But I'd just like to say again that these things that they bring to us during a budget cycle are their suggestions. They're professional opinions on directions in which we can or choose to or not to do. But again, I would even call the answer to call you back up the answer for the citizens if it were necessary. But this isn't the only direction that we can go. There's different directions that we can go, different things that we can come back and revisit. And again, like I said, I got to suffer through 3, 4, 5 hours worth of a meeting, and they took my meal away from us and do the same thing to departments. Everybody can get their own food if they had more money at home in their pocket because we won't increase meals tax, then this city might not have to pay for their meals when they get to work. They can pay for their own meals if they could afford them better. But respectfully, I think we should, again, take the citizens in consideration. I'm not totally against the taxes. I just think that we should be more considerate with them and, again, look at the departments as a way of rebudgeting to figure out other recommendations. And I think that's feasible. And I even see you shaking your head, so I guess that, we can go back and revisit it again. But again, thank you all for coming in tonight. Tell Lottie Dottie and everybody, like my grandma would say, to call your representatives. My phone number is listed on the cards. We got emails. Give us your opinion in the next couple of days on as to what you think about these taxes, and please tell everybody. Tell them, hit your council up. I yield to Vice Mayor.
Let's end on a positive note. There's a gentleman, we have a special guest in the audience tonight. It is Madam City Attorney's hubby. So we just want to say hi and glad you can join us. I don't think you're going to be here for her last meeting with us, but to let everybody know that he's there. We wanted to say hi.
Is this her last meeting or next
It's
Tuesday?
Tuesday. It's going to be her last
Oh,
meeting,
my
but we wanted
gosh.
to make sure we verbally tell you that she's been a joy to work with and a blessing to the city. And thank you for allowing her to be shared with us. Yes. In a good way, some of us.
I'm trying to keep her. I'm trying to keep her.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Denton,
Counselor Denton?
Councilor Pelham,
Yes.
Councilor Holloway,
Absolutely.
Councilor Joyner,
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Call y'all representatives
All right.
about these